Earlier this afternoon, the Vermont Attorney General's office filed a charge of simple assault against former St. Albans police officer Jason Lawton for striking Amy Connolly while she was in the custody of the St. Albans Police Department. This is a case that undermines the public trust. We will not tolerate this, and we look forward to the prosecution.
You've seen this video, I assume?
Yes, I have.
Just viscerally, what did it do to you?
I think my first reaction was that this was an individual who was handcuffed behind their back, who was in the care and custody of the police department, and that this punch, which was an uppercut to her face, was totally unnecessary, and it was an act of violence, and it was an assault, and it is a crime. And the message here is that nobody is above the law, including the police, and that they had an obligation, a legal obligation, to protect her the minute she was in custody. She was defenseless at that time.
In the affidavit, he says that he hit her in the face as a distraction because she was coming at him. And I mean, what do you say to that?
I think the video...
And that it worked as a distraction.
I think the video and I think the evidence will indicate to the contrary, but we will litigate this case in the court.
Why did it take 8 months to get to this arraignment?
That's a great question. I want to first thank the Vermont State Police for conducting such a thorough investigation. I want to thank Assistant Attorney General Molly Gray and Assistant Attorney General Paul Marcus for handling and prosecuting this matter. But this case came to us, and I'll give credit to the ACLU, and I think when that video came out,
Excuse me? Gotta go that way. And we've got to be able to get through here. We've got a hearing getting ready to go on in there.
I think back to your earlier point, the video was...
Excuse me?
Here.
So I don't know if we've got anybody here because, of course.
So I think when the video came out, when certainly the photo of Ms. Conley's injury was quite shocking, which required an investigation. The state police investigated, we reviewed it, we determined that there was a crime.
Why did that take so long?
I don't think we were aware of it. I think we became aware of it after the video came out.
But you were at least aware of it in August. It's still
3 months.
3 to 4 months.
That's not unusual. 3 months to review a case is not unusual.
Well, what else did you review beyond the video? What other evidence?
There were many different interviews, and so that's not unusual at all.
Who were some of those interviews?
Next question.
Does this send a message to police enforcement at all, or is this just an isolated case?
I think Vermont law enforcement are excellent public servants who get up every day and protect the men and women and children of this state. We are having a debate in this state, in this nation, about use of force. It is a controversial issue, but it is an issue that is, at the end of the day, about public trust. And the police are sworn to protect and serve. And these are difficult cases that are based on the facts. And any time, and we make that determined based on the facts, this, in my opinion, was a crime. This did not have to occur. This was a woman who was in the care and custody of the police, who was handcuffed behind her back in a holding cell. And she was assaulted. That's a crime. We're going to prosecute the case, and we'll see what happens in court.
Should the St. Albans Police Department have referred the case earlier for prosecution?
You know, I don't have an answer to that right now. My understanding is it was reviewed by the Franklin County State's Attorney's Office, but trying to figure out the actual chronology of what occurred, I still don't have all those answers.
Did the state's attorney decline? Did they decline to
That's
prosecute?
my understanding.
TJ, you mentioned a crisis of trust.
Yeah.
This arraignment was held about 10 days after you declined to
Yep.
prosecute another police officer in what was possibly an even worse rough-up of an individual who eventually died. What do you say to people who say, why prosecute this guy when you didn't
Sure.
prosecute the other guy?
Because we base our decision based on the facts and based on the evidence, and every case is different. Every fact is different. The law is the same, and it is whether or not you are legally justified in using force when force is directed at you that puts you in threat of bodily injury or a threat that is imminent. And then you apply the facts to the law. Here, we think the fact that Ms. Conley was handcuffed behind her back in a holding cell, that she was not posing a threat of harm, of injury to the officer. I came to a different conclusion on the Kilburn matter, and I explained that reason a couple weeks ago.
Is this the first time you've brought charges against a police officer?
No.
So this police officer is facing simple assault.
Yes.
I believe the woman is facing aggravated assault. Is there a little bit of a disconnect as to one of them is 1 year possible
That's right.
possible sentence, the other one's 5. Is there a little bit of a disconnect in what you can prosecute and how?
I would direct you to the Franklin County State's Attorney's Office, which is an independent prosecutor's office who have filed charges against Ms. Conley. That's their decision, and they should answer those questions. We made a decision based on the facts in this case. We always reserve the right to amend charges if we see fit, and our case and our investigation will continue.
So I guess what I was asking is, because he's a law enforcement officer, it becomes aggravated assault. But as a police officer, someone who, if a police officer assaults a citizen, it's still simple assault. Should there be a balance? Should an officer who is protected be held to the same level?
If I understand your question, you're talking about a law that was passed, essentially creating a protected class of public servants.
Yes.
And I think that's a good law at the end of the day. We want our public servants, whether they're nurses or police officers, to be protected. As to the facts in this specific case, we didn't make that decision. That decision is that the Franklin County State's Attorney's Office made. And I would say to you that that's a question that they should answer. What we did, what we do in every case, is to review the facts, review the evidence, apply those facts to the law, and make a determination. And as I said, as this case continues to go on, this case is still being investigated. We always reserve the right to amend or bring other charges. And this case will continue to be prosecuted in the court, and we'll continue to do our job.
So just a quick continuation on that. You are running for a higher officer, or at least looking at the governor's office. As a lawmaker, do you think that having police be a protected class, but letting them be able to assault somebody else and have a lower charge is the right thing to have on the books?
I think you're conflating different crimes, and I think it's based on the facts and the evidence.
Would you have a case if there wasn't videotape?
It's a great question, and I think in this case there is a videotape, and the videotape is going to be the best evidence in this case. And so I don't want to speculate what would have happened without it, but it is certainly a critical piece of evidence.
Do you have jurisdiction with Ms. Donnelly's case at all, or is that in the Franklin County?
In regards to Ms. Conley as a defendant, my understanding is the Franklin County State's Attorney have previously filed a criminal charge. That case is pending. I would reiterate that the Franklin County State's Attorney's Office...
Danielle Lawson, Edward Roberts.
...is a independent prosecutor's office, and I'd refer you to them to answer those questions.
You wouldn't have any jurisdiction at any point?
Not while the case is pending.
Have you made any recommendations or communicated with them at all?
No.
Looking at the video, it is almost clear that Ms. Conley made a move to try to strike the police officer. How much is that going to be played into this case?
Well, that's really a question for Mr. Lawton's attorney. My view is the videotape, as I said, is the best evidence. Whether or not she attempted to kick or not, I would say that she was thrown violently against the wall that started this assault. That if she did attempt to kick somebody, that's not clear to me, but if in fact that was determined, that threat was neutralized, and that the punch to the head was gratuitous, unnecessary, and illegal.
Mr. Lawton?
Mr. Lawton had some history of potential misconduct.
Your name? Okay, go on down. Excuse me. Excuse me? Plenty of room. Sorry about that.
They make it interesting, don't they?
He is good.
I also wanted to ask you about Mr. Garone.
Yeah.
There's been an update in that case. What does that do to this new finding by the judge of insanity? What does that do to your handling of things?
Well, there wasn't a new finding of insanity. There was an opinion of competency, and it really doesn't do much. Mr. Donovan has been found competent since this alleged crime occurred. Competency essentially is, do you understand the charges against you and can you assist in the defense? So he's been found competent for the last 3 or so years. So this is a new opinion that we will challenge in court, I think in the next couple weeks.
So does that opinion change any approach that you have?
No, because competency is dynamic, it can change, and whether or not somebody is found not competent or competent, that can change, and you can look at a litany of cases where competency, as I said, is a dynamic condition that changes based on different points in time.
And you'll presumably bring in someone to offer a different opinion?
We'll challenge the opinion.
The attorneys that were representing the state today.
Assistant Attorney General Molly Gray and Assistant Attorney General Paul Marcus.
Okay. Would you happen to know the attorney who was representing Mr. Lawton?
It's Rebecca Otey, O-T-E-Y, from Bristol, Vermont.
Thanks, guys.